Hi guys, I'm Anita and I'm back with another video. Today I want to share with you a recommendations video. I haven't done one of these in a while, so when I was thinking about a specific genre I wanted to talk about today, I decided to go with science fiction because I realized I haven't talked about that yet, and I do seem to read quite a bit of science fiction. It is my second, I think, most read subgenre after fantasy, and I decided to go with books that are science fiction books that are sort of relatively easy to get into if you're new to science fiction as well, because the type of science fiction that I read isn't like the most difficult to comprehend, because I definitely don't have the knowledge about all of the scientific elements. So often I would find myself not understand what is going on, and then I wouldn't enjoy the book as much. So all of these books are books I recommend because I definitely think that the majority will be able to follow along with it, and they, I think, will appeal to different type of readers as well. That's a good variety in the type of science fiction. So let's start out with the graphic novel series that I've been working on. I think the most known one on BookTube is definitely the Saga series. Sorry about the glare. This is the 5th volume. I've read the first 7, and I definitely want to continue and read volume 8 and 9. But I also know that the authors are on hiatus with this series, and I don't know when they're gonna get back. And I feel like there was something about the cliffhanger in the last volume, so I don't know when I'll pick it up. But I will want to read it soon. This is talked about so much on BookTube, and it's really easy to follow along with. It is a sort of star-crossed lover type plot. We follow these two people who are from different planets who fall in love, have a baby, and we are following the perspective of the baby, and they are at war. Like, they're on the run because people don't want them to be together. Also, this is definitely an adult graphic novel because there's a lot of nudity in this one, so you have to be aware of that. But this is like the art style, so I think it's definitely really good. And the other series that I really love, that is a graphic novel series or comic series, I don't know what you call it, is The Descender, which is written by Lemire and colored by Dustin, Nguyen, I believe. This series follows Team 21, who is a robot, and he is sort of the most wanted robot in the universe because he knows the answers towards the harvester robots, who sort of really has been bringing chaos. So this is definitely an interesting storyline, but what I really enjoy about it is like Team 21's story and how he's trying to find his human friend who is now an adult. That part of this series is my main what I love the most about this, but I also really enjoy the art style. It is very pale colors because it's done in watercolors, but I really enjoy it, and I haven't really seen other do this, but I also haven't read like a ton of graphic work. Next one on my list is going to be Fortune Spawn by Rachel Bach. I think really the whole trilogy would be a suitable thing. I have only read the first book, but I own the second, and I will read it whenever I unwrap it. This is the first in a trilogy, and it's sort of, it's YA. I think I remember when I got interested in this, it was pitched to me as Vampire Academy set in space, just not with any vampires or anything, but it was like Rose was the main character in this setting, and I definitely sort of agree with that. There's definitely elements of this that reminds me a lot of her. So yeah, it's a really fast-paced science fiction book, and it has a lot of humor to it as well, and the actual scientific elements are pretty easy to follow along with. It doesn't go too science heavy, so it's definitely something that you can read as a beginning novel if you want to. The next series I want to recommend is a recommendation for romance readers. If you are a romance reader and really like Nora Roberts or something like that, then definitely read the J.D. Robb series, which is also Nora Roberts, it's a pen name. It's the In Death series, and it's set in, I believe it starts out in 1945, and so a bit far into the future, but otherwise it's just a police procedural kind of thing, but with a romantic element into it, like romantic suspense, if you like that genre. that is what this is part of. It's a really, really long series, so you definitely need to be aware of that. I think there are 50 books, if not more, at this point. I have personally read the first 9 and really enjoyed them, and I can't wait to get back into the series and actually continue with it, because I definitely enjoyed it. I don't think the beginning was the strongest. I remember I really enjoyed it, but I know if I read it now, I wouldn't have the same feel towards it. But I do really love the characters where they are now, and I do like the character growth that we see over the series, and it actually already starts with, I think, book 4 or 5-ish in that area, and the side characters are super interesting to follow as well. So I definitely recommend this if you are a romance reader and you want to read some fun futuristic romance thing, then definitely this could be a good option for you. The next one I have on my list is Here and Now and Then by Chen. I personally enjoy time travel stuff, so this is the first part of that genre on my list, of sub genre on my list. Here and Now and Then follows this man who is a time traveler. He is from, I forgot what year he's from, it's like 20 something into the future. Pretty far into the future, I believe around the 2050s or something like that. And they have a way of traveling, and he's part of a specific team, but then he travels back and something happens when he's back, and that the time machine is corrupted, so he can't get back, and so he actually builds up a life there. He's able to communicate with his old life, which is interesting, but he's able to communicate, and then one day they have actually managed to restore this, and then he has to go back to his old life where he was originally from. But what does happen is that he at this time has been there for so long that he has married and he has a kid, and so he has to go back, leave them, and all he has to, but he just does something that so that his daughter is able to contact him even though he's in the future, and that sets off this whole book, because then there's suddenly a lot of people after this girl, and so he has to dare to travel back to this time again, one more jump in order to save his daughter. And yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I think the scientific element really worked well with me, or the time travel element, and there was a lot of scientific stuff as part of it as well, but it was not difficult to understand, and I think that the whole plot was so interesting. I definitely want to read more by Chen, because I believe that I have a feeling that I would really enjoy his other books as well, with the way that he plotted this, so I'm definitely more intrigued with that as well. But I've only so far read this one. Next up we have the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. This has become a very well-loved series on BookTube as well, and it's a novella series with the exception of The Network Effect, which is a full-length novel. Otherwise, all of them has been novellas, and I think they work really well as novellas. This series follows Murderbot. Murderbot is android security unit kind of thing that protects the humans in this world. But Murderbot used to be a Murderbot, so she knows that she at one point killed a lot of people, but she hasn't done that since becoming this sec unit, obviously. But all Murderbot wants to do is just watch Netflix shows all the time and just do that instead of everything else. And then yeah, I love Murderbot. Murderbot is a great character, and that is one of the perks of this. Also, when you're introduced to art in the second book, art is just as fun. I definitely love this, and I will definitely recommend it for a lot of people, because also it's really, really easy to relate to Murderbot, because they seem to have such a personality, so that you're definitely able to sort of relate to them, and that makes it for a really fun read. And it's really interesting seeing things from an AI's perspective as well, or yeah, so definitely recommend this if you want to read an AI type of story. I think you'll really enjoy it. Next up we cut into another science fiction or time travel series. This is less scientific, and I had a hard time actually. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to put it in here, but on the other hand, I don't know where else to put it, because it is a time traveling series. and it doesn't go very heavy on sci-fi, but the way that they travel back in time is definitely scientific. So the series that I'm talking about is obviously the Chronicles of Lemire series by Jodi Taylor. You know, I've been reading this for, if you've been on my channel for a while, you know I've been reading this for the past couple of years, and I have read 11 books in this series. I think there's a new one that's come out that I'm definitely eager to get to soon. And this series follows historians who are traveling in time using these pods, and they are going back in time to sort of report back on what happened. But then there are other people who's trying to mess with things, and they travel back in time to try to change things. And there's a lot of rules in the society that you have to stick to, and it's a lot of fun. It's super British and has a lot of humor to it, and the narrator of the audiobook is really good. I've heard that Jodi Taylor actually narrates them herself as well, but I don't have access to those. I only have access to those by Sarah Ram, but I definitely really enjoy them. And if you enjoy this series, then there's a spin-off series called The Time Police. The Time Police is part of this world, and they make sure that people are following the rules, which makes sense. And I definitely enjoyed that one more or less equally as the Lemire books, so I'm really looking forward to seeing where that series goes. So yeah. The next author I want to recommend is John Scalzi. I have read 2 books by him, and I definitely should be reading more, but what I definitely can say with it is that he writes really easy to understand kind of science fiction. You can definitely understand what's going on, even if you aren't the usual fantasy, like science fiction reader. We have The Collapsing Empire, which is a start to a trilogy. I haven't continued with, but I really want to. This one follows, this is set in far into the future, and everyone has abandoned Earth because it's not inhabitable anymore. I couldn't say that right now. So they have managed to build something called the flow, and the flow is how you travel between the different planets with an easier speed to get different resources, crops and food and other medical supplies and stuff. But something is threatening the flow, and it says that in the near future that will disappear, and that will mean that the universe as they know it everyone become extinct really easily. And so that is sort of the general plot of this, and we are following the perspective of a couple of people, I think, but one of them is from like a commander type person, and which is really interesting because I get a lot of political aspects to it. The other book by John Scalzi that I've read is Fascination, and Fascination is very different, yet it has some similarities. It has a lot of humor. Both of these books has a lot of humor, but this one follows this lawyer type person who comes to work on this planet, and they are looking for resources. They have found these pearls that are very has a lot of worth to them, and so he's basically working to find this, but then he comes across these fuzzies who were apparently inmates, like living on this planet before the humans invaded it, obviously. And so this changes things, and it becomes sort of a legal science fiction thriller kind of thing. It has a lot of things going on. I love the fuzzies. I loved everything about this. I really enjoyed the legal aspect of this as well, and I will definitely recommend it. It's a good place to start, and also it's a standalone, so it is like a complete work, so you don't have to stick to a series or anything. So yeah, and I'm definitely ready to move on with more of John Scalzi's books for the future. I recently bought Red Shirts, which is a parody on Star Trek, I believe. I haven't watched the Star Trek, so I hope I can follow along anyway, but I'm hoping that with how I know that he writes, that it's easy to follow along with anyway. The second to last author of book that I'm gonna mention is Stories of Your Life and Others by Chiang. I don't think I have a review of this up on my channel, and I was super impressed with this. This is a short story collection. It has like 10 stories, I think, And I definitely didn't have any problems understanding, but there are very different elements to science fiction in here that is explored, and I really enjoy that. The title story in itself is just mostly about communicating with an alien species, and it's sort of a lot about that, trying to communicate with them. And then there are stories that is about math science, and then there are stories about beauty and and fetuses. I've had a hard time remembering all of them. I definitely need to reread this at some point, but definitely check my review of it up here. I talk a little bit about each of the stories in here. I gave this collection 5 stars. I think it's one of the only collections ever I've given 5 stars. So I definitely recommend it, and I definitely enjoyed it, and I think that everyone should try it out and at least check out the title story and see if it's something for them, and then they can decide if they want to read on. No, that was the third to last. I have 2 more authors on here. The second to last is The Martian by Weir. This is one I was hesitating a little bit about because I do know that it's very science fiction heavy in a way, but I don't think it was difficult to understand. It's the first, I think one of the first science fiction books I ever read. It is very talked about because it was very popular when it came out. It follows this man, why have I forgotten his name right now, who is part of this crew on the way to Mars. They are on Mars when something happens and they have to leave quickly, but he ends up being stuck because they believe that he died and they left him there, and so he's stranded on Mars without any way to return back to Earth. And then he has to figure out how to make a living and try and see if he can do something so that he doesn't die right away. Why it's easier to understand this than what I believe other very heavy science fiction books would be like, is that he writes these log files every day about things that are happening and why it is happening, and because that's part of a process for astronauts when they're out for like on space travels. They have to log everything that they're doing and everything that they discover, and that is also what Mark Watney, now it came to me, the name came to me, Mark Watney does that. So definitely that is one of the reasons why I'm able to more easily comprehend it. And then we see perspectives also from Earth and how they are dealing with this and how they're trying to figure out how to help out with getting Mark Watney back to Earth, basically. And it's just such an interesting story, and I read it relatively quickly. The Martian is one of my absolute favorite science fiction books of all time, so definitely recommend it if you haven't read it already. And I would even say if you've watched the movie, I would still consider it. I think that the movie does really well, but I think Mark Watney is just fun to be explored on page, I guess. Anyway, the last and final series and books I'm gonna talk about today is probably not gonna be a surprise. If you have followed my channel for the past years, you will know that I discovered the later Astronaut series in 2019, and I read all 3 of them, and I basically gave them 5 stars, 4.5 stars, 5 stars. So this is my favorite science fiction series. So let's talk a little bit about the calculating stars without going too much into detail about it, because it's difficult to talk about it. This is set in an alternative history in the 50s, when a meteorite strikes the Atlantic Ocean and obliterates the majority of the east coast of the US and Canada, including Washington DC. And this explores the theory of what will happen if this happens, and what will do to climate changes and stuff. Elma is a mathematician, and she does calculate what this will cause of different those she finds out that the planet Earth won't be inhabitable in the years to come, because it will start freezing at first, and then the temperature will just keep rising afterwards with the after effects of that. So quickly after this, they decide to start a space program in order to try and colonizing the moon and the space and trying to figure out how to survive. And at first it's only a man program kind of thing, but then as time goes along, the women are being part of the program and they are fighting for their right to be part of this, because obviously if they are going into space, they need to find out that it's also safe for women to travel into space, and so that is basically part of their argument for why they should be part of this program. And Lemire is an ex-pilot from the World War II and definitely knows how to fly and stuff. So yeah, she's taken in as the lady astronaut, and it's a whole other thing. And it, alongside this scientific element, it just explores a lot of things. Especially there's a lot of talk about mental illness, because Lemire suffers from mental illness, and that's a really interesting take on this. There's a lot of talk about race and racism, and sexism is a big part of this as well. I love the way that Robinette Kowall writes this. I was fully immersed in all of the books, and can't wait to find out more what else is gonna happen to the characters. And I definitely recommend this series as a whole. The first 2 books follows Lemire, and the third book follows a different character that is part of the later astronaut group. And yeah, I definitely think this is a series that you should check out if you are new to science fiction. I think it could be a good place to start. Anyway, these were all of the books that I wanted to talk about today. Let me know in the comments down below what science fiction books you have read. Have you read in the books that I've been talking about today, and what were your thoughts on them? If you have any science fiction books you think I'll enjoy based on what I've been talking about today, then definitely let me know in the comments down below, because I'm always eager to try and find some new authors to explore. I definitely prefer AI storylines, time travel, and apparently also alternative history. That works for me as well. And if it's space stuff, it definitely has to be easier to comprehend. Like it shouldn't be too technical, because then I will sort of fall off. So yeah, this is everything I had for you today. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Goodbye.